At this point, I'm not having conversation after the sermon, and I'll explain to you why. There is an underground movement here that has a desire to have the service at about an hour. I've heard this. So what we're going to do is experiment with a few ways to see if we can do that. So please bear with us as we continue this process into the new year. So for this one day, we will not have conversation after the service, after the sermon. Now, yes, we did have a wonderful time at Thanksgiving here on Thursday. I have never seen such great appetizers in my life. I mean, it was really incredible. And the turkey, which, as I said before, Meg had donated, actually we're paying her back for it, cooked in 2.5 hours because it was a 10.5-pound semi-wild turkey. And I put that sucker in the oven and I covered it up and I did the usual stuff. And I thought, 3.5 hours. And I'm glad I went and looked because otherwise it would have been about this big. But it turned out good. Now, as we were planning the Thanksgiving, Deborah and I and others, I remembered many others from my life. The ones from childhood sometimes are best forgotten, at least in my case, but there were ones that were joyful. Other later Thanksgivings with friends and roommates and sometimes the women in my life, going to their house or family for Thanksgiving brought back a lot of good memories. And then there were the strange ones. The kinds of Thanksgivings that in retrospect came from 2 universes over. One of them stands out in particular for me as I thought about this Thanksgiving, and it was at a Zen monastery in Oregon in, I think, 1996. It was my first year of monastic training at Larch Mountain Zen Center, and it was the first Thanksgiving dinner they had decided to do at the monastery had opened. My Zen teachers were a husband and wife, Americans, who had taught and trained for many years, and they thought it would be a lovely thing to invite families of the residents and other special guests, somewhat like what we did here on Thursday. So the day came and we sorted out very important details like the shape of the table. When everybody arrived finally, and everybody was late by the way, I looked around the table and it was, unusual. One of the residents had his family there, his mother and father, along with a sister and brother, and they were all from a very conservative religious bent, probably evangelical, or actually Pentecostal. And they looked a little uncomfortable being in a Buddhist monastery with all these statues and chanting and all that good stuff going on. But, okay, it worked. Across the table, on the other end of the table, was a lesbian couple and their child. And then sandwiched in between them were 3 young Buddhist monks who had recently arrived from South Korea and spoke no English. They were in their semi-formal robes, and they smiled and nodded a lot, but they were looking at the turkey with some suspicion. And they had no idea what the vegetables were. It was a great group. Now, then there was the confusion about the types of the dishes and where they were located, and this sometimes happens. Was the vegan offering too close to the turkey? Was the turkey cooked enough? Because no one had cooked a turkey for 5 years. And so it was and I'm sure some of you, is it cooked enough or is it still kind of semi-raw inside? These were the things that people were concerned about. But nonetheless, we got started. Well, the dramatic moment was during the meal when the teenage son of the Pentecostal family fell asleep with the side of his head in the mashed potatoes on his plate. Fortunately, there was no gravy. Now, what had happened was he had the flu. And he didn't want to tell anybody, and he'd be up and late the night before. And he just collapsed. And so we stopped the meal, and we took him upstairs and got him into bed for a few hours so he could recover. And then we went on. Well, it was a remarkable meal, and we had at least 5 different graces because we asked the Pentecostal family to say grace, and we had the Buddhist monks from Korea do a grace, and we tried to give as much inclusiveness to the group as possible, and the prayers were from many traditions, including to the ancestors of everyone who was there. And what I found remarkable was that we all left politics at the door. Even with all the variety of religious and cultural and political differences, we left the culture war at the front door, and we had a marvelous meal. Now, fast forward to this last Thursday here. We all got to the table in the social hall, armed to the hilt, with appetizers, turkey parts, pre-dinner dessert, and lots of high-carb goodies. There was, like this earlier occasion, some angst about the shape of the table, but we changed it. The turkey was temporarily next to the desserts, but was moved for the sake of propriety. I asked everyone to take a second to remember whoever wasn't there. Like, for example, John, who was in the hospital. Or thinking of Faith and Carl. And thinking of Caroline and Myrna and Winslow, who couldn't be there, but were there in spirit. And not only them, who are, of course, in this present generation, but those who have left us. The Forbes family, who've moved to Colombia. Edith and Oliver Case, who have died, but have moved into legend. And so many people of the last 50-some years who weren't there bodily, but were there at the table in spirit. And they were all there as fond memories, and they were all there at the dinner table with us the other day. So I had an insight that our holidays, like Thanksgiving and Christmas and other holidays, are important not just to celebrate and shop until you drop or eat until you diet, but they're living rituals of our memories, of all of our ancestors who have brought us to this place. And giving thanks seems to be a very powerful invocation that happens especially on Thanksgiving. We give thanks for the food in front of us, even though it might not be as much appreciation as the pilgrims who had nearly starved. We gave thanks for the people at the tables we did on Thursday, and included the people from the past who could not be with us. Giving thanks at Thanksgiving for the people or for the food in the past is like being able to take a deep breath, because we've been rushing around with a frenzy about dinner plans and travel and meeting parents again and getting all the things done that we need to do. And then, of course, all that whirlwind of activity becomes the trial run before Black Friday and its own peculiar rituals. There needs to be that moment, whether you celebrate Thanksgiving the evening before, as some did, or the day of on Thursday, that moment where we can actually sit down and be thankful. Now, what I hear mostly is thanks for the past. Having a good year, having our family or friends together, and all that's good. But we don't usually give thanks for the future. That seems a little odd. Now, the pilgrims might have wondered about giving thanks for the future because they were nervously thinking about the winter ahead. Those people who gathered on Thursday at soup kitchens for special meals, no doubt, are wondering what will happen next. So giving thanks for the future seems a little odd because the future is filled with unknowns and not all of them pleasant. So why should we not only be thankful for the past and thankful for the food and thank you for the family in front of us, but to say thank you to the future? Well, here's why. In the reading this morning, Jane Japka talks humorously about falling through the air before the holidays, shouting our zip code instead of the ripcord of mindful living. She says that we need to find ways to make it through the holiday season, which, if you've not noticed, gets to be a little intense. Our lifelines, she says, in December, as always, are inner quiet, the love we exchange, and our efforts to make the world more whole. We can slow the descent, we can take in the view, and we can land softly. That's one reason why we do Advent. Now, some of you, many of you, maybe all of you, know that this is the first Sunday of Advent. I'm not going to take a poll here. As a colleague wrote, it's ad, meaning to or toward, and vent, meaning come. Coming to, coming forward, coming towards. So something is coming toward us, or vice versa. The birth of a child who made a remarkable change in the world. It is the coming of Christmas Eve and the morning and dinner. It is the arrival of the solstice and the turning from the dark back to the light. It's the miracle of Hanukkah and a light that refused to go out. It is the great turning of the year, and that is what Advent can be. Now, a lot of our congregations avoid Advent because of all of its Christian heritage and symbolism. After all, if you don't believe in the miraculous birth of a Christ child, why do Advent? Well, why not? There is, as always, an alternative, and this is the one I suggest. I would suggest that whether we see ourselves as followers of Jesus of Nazareth, or we see ourselves as Christian, or whatever we may call ourselves, as Unitarian Universalists, what we can do is use Advent as a prayer for the future. Perhaps Advent can be a special prayer that is not owned by any particular faith. Perhaps it can be a meditation for this intense time after Thanksgiving, as we hurry about our tasks and just happen every Sunday to do an invocation of what is coming next, what is coming to us. Oh yes, an incredible birth. Oh yes, the changing of the year. Oh yes, the cycle has turned. Perhaps Advent and its faith, hope, love, and joy are the ripcord that will pull from time to time when things get too intense and we're descending too fast into the craziness of the season. So I suggest that this year we put a different light on Advent. It is to be an Advent of saying thank you to whatever comes next. We can celebrate, if we wish, as the coming of the birth of Jesus. We can hold it up as a promise of coming light and a new year that we will face together. And it can be a prayer of thanks that we are together and will face the new year as one big family at a dinner table that is big enough to hold us all. And with always one seat more. So what I'm going to do as conclusion here is we're going to do a guided meditation on Advent. I would invite you to sit comfortably in your seat. I'm only going to light one candle, the first candle of Advent, while we're doing this meditation. In succeeding weeks, we'll do the others. This time, I would invite us to please use this as a meditation. A time of quiet, creating a promise, creating a future prayer that if we give thanks now for these items, these candles, these lights, maybe we'll make them come true. So the first candle is the candle of faith. and let it stand for our faith in ourselves and our children and all of humankind. Think of that word faith. We might have faith in our family, in our congregation, in our country, in our world. When we say we have faith, what do we mean? How do we hold that word up? That no matter what, we have faith. That is the first light. The second light, the second candle, is the candle of hope. May that hope light all the ideals and aspirations that have given light to people in times of darkness, fear, and despair. And as we hold up the word and the light hope, let's think of our own lives when the times have been there that we've had no hope. But somehow we've picked ourselves back up, or others have helped us, or we've helped them. Imagine the desperate hope that people in Syria and Libya and Egypt, and yes, here in the United States, who are desperately poor and trying to make their lives work, and still holding on to hope. How do you express hope? How do you keep that light alive? And then the third candle, the third light, is the light of love and compassion. It stands for tenderness, kindness, forgiveness, and affection that we all share. Our Universalist ancestors said that no one is left out, that all are saved, or put a different way, we are all whole. None of us are doomed. How do we hold that candle and that light up so that others may see their way to a place of wholeness? Then finally, the candle of joy. May it stand its light, that joy is hidden all around us. Every moment it may come to us, a child's smile, an insight that we never thought we'd understand, a hand holding ours, the joy of greeting a new day, a joyfulness that says thank you, thank you, thank you for this beautiful day. Joyful celebration of life, our families and companions, so that we all get through it together. So all these lights, these candles, faith, hope, love, and joy. Take another few moments of quiet just to hold them up in your mind. And ask yourself this question: can they be considered a prayer? As Meister Eckhart said, if the only prayer I ever say is thank you, it will be sufficient. So can Advent, no matter what our faith is, be such a prayer and such a hope and such a thank you. Hold that in silence in your heart, please, for a few moments, and I'll ring the bell, and then we'll sing.